All events and details of this investigation has been classified as top secret and have been redacted.
This is the continuation of the case of Colt Knight, Part 2. Early that next morning after that little incident involving Candace, Paul, and Colt, a man named Hayfield drove down the same road that Colt wrecked his truck and camper on. As he was driving, he noticed some debris on the side of the road, so he pulled his van over so he could look through the debris. He finds pieces of a truck and a camper, so he thinks to himself, I remember passing a small diner in the opposite direction a ways back, so he got back into his van and drove towards the diner. After he arrived at the diner, Hayfield sat at a booth and ordered some food. He was being flirtatious with the waitress as he ate. The diner wasn't busy, so the waitress just hung out and talked with Hayfield. After finishing his meal, he handed her a $20 bill and complimented the food and the small town hospitality. Then he says to her, I know this is a shot in the dark, but I drove over 300 miles looking for my friend so I could help him out after getting into a wreck up the road a ways. But now he's not answering his phone. I don't know if it's bad reception or what. He takes out a picture of Colt, handing it to the waitress, and she remembers seeing Colt and told Hayfield that he left with a local girl that eats there every now and again with her daughter. And she does remember seeing the three of them leave together. So Hayfield walks outside the diner and makes a call. The person he calls was a man named Mr. Wainsworth. He tells Mr. Wainsworth that he knows Colt is staying somewhere nearby in this small town and he'll track him down on the next full moon. A day later, Colt receives his insurance check in the mail, and Candace drops him off at a local used car dealership to pick up his new truck. Later that afternoon, Candace opens her front door, very surprised to see Colt standing there holding a dollhouse. After seeing the dollhouse, Debbie's face lit up with joy, saying, Is that for me? Colt tells her, It certainly is, sweetheart. Debbie hugs Colt, thanking him. Candace is in disbelief of his kindness to her daughter, telling him, I drop you off to pick up your new truck and you come back bearing gifts. Mr. Colt, you are too much. Debbie excitedly tells Colt to follow her upstairs so she can show him where she wants him to put the dollhouse, and she takes off running up the stairs to her bedroom. As he begins to go up the stairs, Candace said, That dollhouse is awful fancy. How much did it cost? Colt reassures Candace that it was no big deal and that it doesn't matter how much it cost because it made her happy. Also, he noticed Debbie had a lot of dolls and nowhere for them to live, so he bought it for her. Debbie excitedly said from the top of the stairs, Come on, Mr. Colt, I have the perfect place for it. Candace then tells Colt, You go on and set that up for her. I'll make sure to. Thank you properly later on. After Debbie lets Colt know where she wants the dollhouse, he moves some things around and sets it up for her. As Colt goes to leave her room, Debbie asks him if he would like to play dollhouse with her, and he agrees. Candace watched from the doorway as her daughter and Colt played dollhouse and whispered to herself, Mr. Colt. About an hour later, Debbie is tired and gets in her bed to take a nap. As Colt walks towards the door to leave the room, Debbie says, Thank you, Mr. Colt, and quickly falls asleep. Walking into the hallway, Colt sees Candace standing up against the opposite wall staring at him. As he tells her Debbie is asleep, she lunges forward, wrapping her arms around his neck, kissing him. He picks her up and then carries her into the bedroom. This would be the first time that they were intimate. 2 days later, Hayfield and three other men wearing black tactical clothing, all holding military-grade rifles, stood on the edge of a forest. The men stood in a circle as Hayfield spoke, telling them, It's a full moon, so most likely he'll be somewhere in these woods hunting for deer. One of the men named Newman said, I can't believe you have us out here tracking the boogeyman. Hayfield responds seriously, saying, No, he's a werewolf. Another mercenary named Carey smiles as he said, Well, yeah, that makes sense. All the men laughed except for Hayfield. Human, shaking his head, said, "We're here to track a werewolf because Hayfield's eccentric billionaire boss wants one as a pet." This is ridiculous. Carrie was concerned with getting paid and asked, "What happens when they come up empty-handed? Are they still getting paid?" Harris, the third man of the mercenaries, was confident in Hayfield and said, "If Hayfield called us, then there is something to this. And we definitely are getting paid, right?" Hayfield replied, "Of course." Carrie asked, "So, what happens if I get bit?" Human then said, "You'll be taking flea baths." Just then, a loud howl could be heard far off into the distance. All of the men looked at each other as the mood turned serious. Hayfield asked them, "Now, how many wolves do you think are in this part of the country?" He then tells Harris to go get the drones out of his van, which Harris did. Hayfield then holds a drone controller as the drones take flight and the men begin to walk into the woods. As they enter the woods, Hayfield reminds them to have their communications on and no live ammunition, tranquilizers only, because if he's dead, pay is cut in half. After walking more than a mile into the woods, Hayfield sees something large and bipedal on the drone controller screen, chasing a deer. He immediately tells everyone what he sees, and it's about half a click northwest from them. Hayfield looks at the drone camera feed with Harris. They watch this massive creature running around trees, gaining on the deer and leaping towards the deer, but the deer makes a sudden hard turn, avoiding the beast. The creature jumps into the trees, continuing to follow the deer, jumping from tree to tree. Then the deer finds a quiet opening in the woods and stops, looking around to see if it's still being pursued. Without making a sound, the werewolf leaped over 30 feet from the tree line, landing on top of the deer, biting into its neck. The deer goes limp as the werewolf stands up with the dead animal hanging from its mouth. Hayfield tells Harris to put the controller up and get his weapon ready, then tells all his men to move quickly before that thing runs off. They reach the opening in the forest where the werewolf was still feeding on the deer. They all quietly spread out along the tree line. Hayfield tells Carrie he's their best shot, so take him down. Carrie readies his shot, holds his breath, then pulls the trigger. The tranquilizer dart hits the wolf in his back. The werewolf whips around quickly, looking directly into Carrie's eyes, showing his fangs. The beast rushed towards Carrie, so fast he was only able to get off one more shot. But the werewolf was unfazed by the tranq darts and bit down on Carrie's shoulder and neck, viciously shaking him side to side like a rag doll. As the other men stepped out from the tree line into the moonlight, rapidly firing their weapons. The werewolf was now covered with tranquilizer darts, but they seemed to have no effect on it. The werewolf released Carrie from his jaws, slinging his body off into a nearby tree. As the beast ran off, vanishing into the darkness of the woods, Hayfield sprinted over to Carrie to apply pressure on his wound, yelling out, "Somebody come help me get Carrie up." Hayfield and Harris hold Carrie up on his feet as they enter a hospital ER lobby. Hayfield is screaming for a medic. A lady sitting at a desk points to a nearby room and tells them to put him in the bed. She quickly picks up the phone and says that she has a patient that just came in who is in critical condition. Hayfield steps outside of the hospital as the doctors look over Carrie. Harris tells them that some huge wolf bit him on the neck. The doctor pulled open Carrie's bloody hospital gown, revealing that Carrie was now completely healed. While outside of the hospital, Hayfield called Mr. Wainsworth repeatedly before he answered and told him the whole situation, that one of his men had been bitten and that he was in the hospital and was now barely alive. But Mr. Wainsworth was not worried at all about this news. He was just glad to hear that they were homing in on Colt. Mr. Wainsworth told Hayfield to quickly get his man out of that hospital before he heals and brings any unwanted attention to himself or them. Carrie wakes up in a hotel bed with Hayfield aiming his gun at him. Carrie was confused and asked what was going on. He told Carrie bluntly, "You got bitten, so I'm making sure you don't attack me." Carrie notices that his bite mark is completely healed, so he tells Hayfield that he's okay and actually feels really good. Hayfield puts the gun down as he tells Carrie the current situation, saying, "Our employer of this little excursion said that you would heal, and you healed. He also said that you are now infected, so now you're a werewolf." Carrie said in disbelief, "I'm a werewolf?" Hayfield continued to explain, "Yeah, but you can't spread it because you're not pure-blooded, so don't worry, our employer is not interested in having you as his pet." Carrie replies, "Well, I guess that's the good news. So, what now?" Hayfield then said, "You learn how to change into a werewolf. Track his scent, we capture him, get paid, and go home." Back at Candace's farm, her and Colt are inside the barn stacking hay. Candace got turned on by Colt's brute strength, the way he handled the large bundles of hay, and seductively locked eyes with him before walking up on him from behind and wrapping her arms around his waist. Just as they started to kiss, there was a loud knocking on the barn wall. Looking towards the knocking sound, they see Agents Norman and Shaw standing at the barn entrance. Candace quickly spoke, asking, "Who are you?" Agent Shaw apologizes for the interruption and introduces himself and Agent Norman as FBI agents, and that they needed to speak with Mr. Knight. Defensively, Candace asked about what. Agent Shaw promised her that they wouldn't take much of their time, but Candace was still not liking this situation and told them if they do not have a warrant, they need to leave immediately because she didn't give them permission to be on her private property. Colt places a hand on her shoulder, giving her a quick kiss and assuring her he'd be right back. Candace crossed her arms, watching Colt as he walked outside of the barn with the two agents. The three men walked about 100 yards from the barn near the agent's car. Agent Shaw begins by complimenting Candace's beauty to Colt and that he's a lucky man. Then he tells Colt that he and Agent Norman got this crazy report of a man being hospitalized after being bitten by a huge dog man, and that the gentleman that was attacked had a huge bite mark on his neck. Colt looked annoyed and said, "You came out here to ask me about some folklore of werewolves and fairies?" Agent Shaw replied, "Oh, no, not fairies. They are not the little sweet creatures depicted in stories. Vicious, nasty little things that lure children into the woods and kidnap them." Colt, tired of beating around the bush, asked them directly, "So, who are you really? I doubt the FBI will be looking for werewolves." Agent Shaw smiled as he said, "I guess the jig is up, Agent Norman. He's figured us out. No, we are not with the FBI. We, Mr. Knight, are with the undocumented branch of the government, and everything we do is classified as top secret and is redacted." Colt then asks, "So, you're the men in..." Agent Shaw cuts him off, saying, "Not at all, Mr. Knight. I'm not looking for the one-armed man, and Agent Norman doesn't have a rich uncle that lives in Bel Air, California. You get what I'm pitching to you, Mr. Knight?" Colt nodded his head yes. Agent Shaw continued, "Now that you know who we are not, Mr. Knight, I'm only going to ask you this one time, and one time only. So please, tell us what happened on that night you bit that man in the woods." Colt tells them everything that happened that night in detail, emphasizing that he was just hunting deer, and he has never bitten or hurt anyone. He also said that he only attacked him because he had been shot by tranquilizer darts and he did not want to be captured. Agent Shaw then said, "You were deer hunting? Heck, that's no problem at all, Mr. Knight." Agent Norman backed him by saying, "Not a problem at all." Colt looks at Agent Norman saying, "You're not human, are you? Because you don't smell like one." Agent Shaw smiles saying, "Agent Norman is an alien from another planet. Don't worry about his hard exterior, he's just a big old teddy bear once you get to know him." Agent Norman calmly said, "Grizzly bear." Agent Shaw continues, "Now that we're all amigos, here's the bad news. Apparently, somebody knows who and what you are, and they are definitely trying to capture you. And my guess is they won't stop. We are very aware of who you are, Mr. Knight, and that you are not dangerous. But if you want to keep that beautiful woman and her daughter safe, you need to leave." Colt slowly shakes his head, looking over at Candace standing in the barn doorway, then looks back at Agent Shaw saying, "This is the first time in a long time I've been happy." Agent Shaw emphasizes with him, telling Colt that his job and love don't mix, so he can relate. He then recommended to Colt, tell her that he was a witness to a mafia murder, so it's not safe for him to stay here any longer. Colt disappointedly agrees. Agent Shaw tells Colt that they will be close by and keeping an eye out, just in case those men show back up again. The two agents drive off Candace's property, and as soon as they are out of sight, Agent Norman activates the car's cloaking. Now, with their vehicle invisible, they drove back onto the property close to the house and waited. Later that night, Colt and Candace sat in front of Colt's camper with the campfire going. Candace spoke saying, "You've been quiet about those FBI agents and what they wanted. I want to know what's going on. I want to know if I've made a mistake by letting you stay here." Colt tells her, "I know we just met, but you are something special, Candace, and I don't want you to be in any danger." Candace nervously asked, "So, what is it, Colt?" Colt explained himself saying, "I have people looking for me, people in the mafia, because I witnessed a homicide. That's why the FBI came looking for me today. So, I have to leave." Candace becomes angry. "I don't believe this. All this work needs to be done, and you're leaving? How am I supposed to do all this by myself? I thought I could rely on you." Colt tells her, "I don't want to leave. I have to leave." Candace tells him not to lie. He wants to leave because he's too lazy to do the work. Colt assures her that once this situation is dealt with, he will come back. Candace said, "I'll figure it out on my own." As Candace walks away, turning her back to Colt, she begins to cry. Colt stands up, yelling out, "I'm not coming back for the work, Candace. I'm coming back for you." Colt watches Candace walk into the house with a broken heart. Without warning, Colt feels something sharp in his back. Then he falls face first into the ground. The four mercenaries surround Colt as he lays on the ground, unable to move. One of them joyfully said, "The elephant tranquilizers did the trick." Human said to Hayfield, "Easy money." Hayfield said, "Carrie, Harris, grab him before his girlfriend comes back." Carrie grabs his wrists and Harris grabs his ankles, and then they begin to walk away with him. Agent Shaw seemingly pops out of thin air, startling the mercenary, saying, "What are you all doing with my friend Mr. Knight?" Hayfield raised his weapon, pointing it at Agent Shaw, saying, "Who are you?" Agent Shaw replies, "Well, I'm Agent Shaw, and that is Agent Norman, and we're with the FBI. Now, where are you going with Mr. Knight?" Human raised his rifle saying, 150 grand, boys. Agent Shaw then tells them, I'm going to recommend you lower that weapon. Agent Norman here, he isn't as friendly as I am. Human opens fire on Agent Norman, and Agent Norman rushes over to him with a powerful right-hand punch that sends him flying off into the darkness. Hayfield takes off running quickly, followed by Harris. Carrie lets out a monstrous yell, transforming into a werewolf. Carrie takes aim and opens fire on Agent Norman. Agent Norman extends his right arm, and a protective field appears, deflecting all the bullets. Carrie, now filled with rage, sprints towards Agent Norman, leaps into the air, and drop kicks him in the chest. Agent Norman absorbs the blow, then punches him as he lands, knocking him backwards. Quickly, moving forward, Agent Norman throws a left hook, missing Carrie as he ducks under it, and quickly counters Agent Norman with the leg sweep. Agent Norman hits the ground hard, landing on his back. Carrie leaps at him and runs into a strong right-hand punch as Agent Norman rolls over. As Carrie and Agent Norman fight, Agent Shaw calmly says, You keep having your fun, Agent Norman. I'll go apprehend the other two. Then, within the blink of an eye, Agent Shaw goes from relaxing and enjoying a fight to running at 50 miles per hour. Agent Shaw approaches Hayfield from behind and throws a shoulder in his back, lifting him up off the ground, then falling flat on his stomach. Agent Shaw throws a small device at Hayfield that quickly wraps around his body with metal wire. Continuing to run at 50 miles an hour, he spots Harris, and he circles around in front of him. Charging at Harris and lowering his stance, Agent Shaw hits him with the shoulder to his abdomen, knocking him up off his feet and into the air. Harris hits the ground hard on his back as Agent Shaw throws a small device on him as well, quickly wrapping him with wire. Back near the camper, Agent Norman chases Carrie and loses sight of him in the darkness and the tall grass. Alice, his AI, told Agent Norman that they already apprehended 3 men for interrogation, so pursuing the werewolf was unnecessary.